So to start things off, I'm going to ask the candidates that are here this evening just to introduce themselves by name and what position they're running for, and then we'll come back to better introductions here in just a minute. So starting with you, Christina.
I'm Christina Daniel, and I'm running for Ward 2 councilor position.
I'm David Broyles, and I'm running for Ward 2.
I am Ty Coleman, and I'm running for mayor of Alamosa.
I'm Joseph Lucero, and I'm seeking re-election for the position of mayor of Alamosa.
I'm Michael Stefano, Ward 4, seeking re-election.
I am Michael Carson, and I'm seeking councilor seat for Ward 4.
Good evening. I'm Jan Vigil, running for at-large.
All right. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. So how the forum is going to go this evening, is that each candidate will be given 3 minutes to introduce themselves, which is extended from the original 2 minutes as your sponsors had determined ahead of time. We extended it a minute because we would like each of you to address the marijuana issues that are on the ballot in your opening comments, because I'm certain there will be questions about that later, and maybe we can dodge that question by covering it in your opening comments. We will signal you at the 2-minute mark, and when we get to the actual questions, you will be given 2 minutes to respond. And all candidates may be addressed on specific questions. In the case of a specific question to a specific candidate, then your opponent will be allowed to comment on that same question. I'm kind of remiss that I didn't introduce Randy Wright. He is the Executive Director of the Alamosa Community Development Corporation, as well as Alamosa County Chamber of Commerce. Appreciate you being here, Randy, and being my official timer. And also thanks to Holly Martinez. I don't know where she went. Oh, she's back there. Thank you, Holly, for all the help that you've given. And we will hear from City Manager Heather Brooks about the midway point to talk about the issues that are on the ballot in addition to the candidates. Written questions must be submitted to myself or Randy for review, and we'll try to eliminate crossover questions as well as anything, God forbid, would be inappropriate, but I don't think that will probably happen. And of course, we have the media here in terms of me and my editor, Ruth Heidi, and the media is allowed to ask questions from the floor with identification, although I don't know that we have any other media other than Ruth here. So that being said, I think we'll start with the mayoral candidates, and Mayor Lucero, we'll start with you with your opening comments.
Thank you, and thank everyone for being here. I really appreciate your presence. It means a lot to not only myself, but everyone here. We have an opportunity to continue a lot of the good work that we're doing at this point in time with and through the city, not only through our city council, but through city staff. One of the most important things that I value is the ability to work with folks on a one-to-one basis in our community. I think that's very valuable, being able to sit down or just visit with someone on the phone, not necessarily text, but visit with folks about some of the different issues that concern them and that are important to them, I think is not only valuable to myself, but to council as a whole. I have been associated with City Council since the mid-90s and have enjoyed my my term as mayor the last 4 years because I've had an opportunity to, in a sense, more or less see the broad spectrum of things from the chair, in a sense. My father and my wife always tells me, you got to stand for something or you're going to fall for anything. I'd like to stand for you folks in the community. I value what you have to tell me. I take it to heart. And many times, I bring a lot of those ideas and wishes to council to represent you. I want to continue doing that. I think I've got another 4 good years in me, and I'd appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Mayor, could you just address briefly the marijuana question?
Amendment 64 opened a can of worms. Now the worms are proliferating everywhere. Marijuana is a legal substance through Amendment 64, and unfortunately, many communities have felt a lot of the unintended consequences of the sale and use of marijuana. I personally don't use it. I personally have been an advocate of non-smoking indoor places ever since I got on council in the mid-90s. I don't believe that drugs of any kind are, or can be enjoyed the way a lot of people think they can. I really wish that that wouldn't have happened. However, we are in the position where we're probably going to have to deal with it. And as a community, in dealing with that, we are entrusted to make decisions, pass ordinances specific to how we're going to deal with the sale of both recreational and medicinal marijuana. At this point in time, we have 2 medicinal clinics outside in the county. Folks are going to be voting on the marijuana issue for sale in the city, both for medical and for recreational marijuana. I really believe that medical marijuana probably has a purpose. We have two clinics, and I think they are taking care of they're taking care of the medical needs of the folks that really need it. My personal opinion is if a doctor prescribes it, great, buy it. There's an outlet for it. I don't necessarily believe that it needs to be in the city, but we're going to let the voters decide, and whatever their decision is, that's what we will abide with here at council. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Coleman.
Thank you, Keith, and thank you to everyone who came out here tonight. We really appreciate your support. I am Ty Coleman, and I'm an ordinary person doing my best to make an extraordinary difference in our community. When I was growing up, my parents, too, told me that, son, if you don't know what you stand for, you will fall for anything. So I stand for doing what is right, just, and fair for all in our community. If there was a AAA designation for what Alamosa means to me, the AAAs would represent I'm all about Alamosa. I'm excited to work on projects that are listed in our comprehensive plan that will enhance the quality of life of our residents, such as beautifying the river corridor and expanding our parks, our trails, and our bike paths. I'm dedicated to making sure that our city staff have the tools that they need to do their jobs effectively while improving public awareness and public safety. I'm committed to supporting the community partners that help with addressing drug issues in our communities, and I'm supportive of the programs that help seniors live healthier lives. In my opinion, a truly and dedicated and compassionate mayor should be accessible and visible to the community throughout the election term, and not only during election season. They should be able to work with others for the greater good of the community without causing a sense of divisiveness. They should respect protocol and not undermine it, and be willing to serve because they care more about the needs of the community than they do about monetary compensation. And I believe in being the positive change that one would like to see. And that's why I'm running for mayor of Alamosa. Now, what I'm about to say may come to a surprise to some of you, but not those who are close to the situation that we're dealing with. As a council, we have tried to maintain a positive outlook and a sense of professionalism. So the public may not be aware of some of the struggles that we've had with Mayor Lucero and his improper behavior. Council held several work sessions to address Mayor Lucero's improper behavior and disregard for council and staff direction. Council discussed censure in regards to his unprofessional behavior as his disregard for and his disregard for his role as the charter states, which is a very serious matter, and it's obvious to council that trust has been broken between Mayor Lucero and our city manager because he has repeatedly tried to undermine the existing protocol according to charter, which has caused a sense of divisiveness. As your mayor, I would lead by example and improve council and staff's dynamics. As your mayor, I will do my best to serve our city with pride and honor. As your mayor, I guarantee you that I will treat our staff and residents with dignity and respect. And here's why it's important. United we stand, but divided we fall. And in regards to marijuana, the citizens have gone through a process, and they have a citizen-initiated ordinance that's on the ballot. It's going to come down to what you, the people, decide, what you want to happen with marijuana. So please come out and vote so that your voices will be heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Ty. Let's move to the Ward 2 election, and we'll start with Councilor Daniel.
Thank you, Keith. Good evening, everyone. I'm Christina Daniel, and I have served as your city councilor for Ward 2 for 2 years. It has been an honor to serve in that capacity, and I feel like I have learned a lot, and I have really appreciated the opportunity for service. For me, being a city councilor is really about serving you and serving our town and providing a balanced vision and view to what we have coming up in our community. I enjoy Alamosa. I enjoy living here. I enjoy seeing families live here and grow and taking the opportunities we provide to flourish. And it has been great to see more young families coming into the community and young professionals and older professionals as well, but people who want to build their lives here. And I have appreciated that and being able to represent all of them throughout this process. My core values and why I think it's important that I stay on council is that I am about honesty and integrity. I say the truth as I believe it and see it even when it's difficult. I have addressed council and staff with things that I think are important and that I think our community needs to be valued about. Sometimes those opinions are not popular, and sometimes people don't like to hear it, and part of what I think my role and responsibility is to share them, especially when they've been shared with me by you all. And I think that that's one of the things I value the most about serving in this position, is I get to have my own opinions and my own ideas, but you're the people I represent. And if I don't represent you and I only go off my own script, that's not fair, and that's not what you elected me for. I do think it's really important to listen as much as I talk. One of the things that I strive to do, and I think it can be a challenge for all of us, is to really listen to understand and not listen to have an argument. And so one of the things that I have been working on throughout all of our decisions is really listening to understand someone who has a different perspective than I do, and really to bring balance and equity to those discussions. I think it's important that we provide a voice for those who don't have a voice. I also have many years of experience in leadership positions in this community. I was honored to serve at the Mental Health Center for 10 years and be their chief operating officer. I have run budgets worth millions of dollars. I've helped with the city's budget for the last 2 years. I have appreciated the opportunity to do that. In addition, I serve on multiple community service organizations. I've been a member of the Optimist Club, the Boys and Girls Club Board, Children's Garden Board. We give our own money, my husband and I, to Tu Casa, to La Puente, attend charity events as much as we can. We believe in the mission and the values of this community. When we talk about the marijuana issue, I struggle. I just need you to know, I feel like this issue has divided our community. It's been one of the hardest issues for me to wrap my head around because people are getting so angry with one another and they're not listening. The challenge I have is that it makes me sad to be this divided, but it also makes me happy that Alamosa has cultivated passionate people who will stand up and talk about what they believe in and share that with us and share that with everyone else. I got a call today asking, just point blank, if I was going to vote yes or no. I asked that person for a further conversation. She refused that conversation, which is okay. She just wanted an answer. I think it's more complicated than yes or no. And the truth is, I don't know how I'm going to vote on November 7th, and I'm not going to lie about that. I worry about what marijuana brings into our community, and I worry about what will happen if people who need it and use it every day, especially on the medical side, don't get it and don't have access to it. So I'm struggling with that, as I think we all should be. And so while that's not a super clear answer, that's really where I'm at right now, and I'm trying to figure it out. And so I hope you're all going to figure it out with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Mr. Broyles.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm extremely honored and I'm excited about running for city council. I think I have a unique set of skills that will complement city council and the city government. I was in banking for 25 years. I founded First Southwest Bank. I helped initiate the San Luis Valley Development Resources Group, where we loaned out over $13 million to startup businesses and new businesses. And if you leverage that throughout the San Luis Valley, that added up to over $50 million. I've served on many civic boards. I was on the board when we established the Boys and Girls Club and built that building. I was on the rec board when we passed a rec tax back in 1989 to build our softball fields, our tennis courts, and of course, and the golf course, and establish a recreation board and soccer fields. And that ripple effect carries on today. I'm happy to see that we're building a ice rink. It benefits the recreation of Alamosa. I have served on many boards, and I have the skill of working together, having unity. I appreciate everyone's talents and their differences. I have a vast experience in budgeting. I agree that the city has made some good strides. However, the city has serious challenges ahead of it. If you look on the internet, one of my concerns is, and you look up the 10 worst cities in Colorado, Alamosa comes in third. I ask why. Crime rate is a problem, drugs are a problem, and we're missing opportunities for economic development. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we had the RV park over here in East Alamosa, where we had 200 RVs this morning, this summer, that would buy their goods and services in Alamosa? How would that help our economy? I think we need a stronger vision for the city. I've read the vision statement for the city, and it appears to be old. It refers to Adams State College as ASC. Isn't it now ASU? And there are several things in there that I take issue to. Also, with regards to the budget, the city budget, one of the things I'm concerned about is this Wednesday they're going to approve a budget. Revenues, or let's take it the other way, expenditures are going to exceed revenues by $855,000. And being from a financial background, I asked City Council why. Why are we allowing this to happen? Why can't we have a balanced budget? The other thing is, City Council only pays lip service to economic development. Why are they cutting the budget in economic development down to $35,000? In my mind, we need $250,000 or more. With regard to marijuana, I asked this question: what's our vision for Alamosa? What's our principles and values? What kind of society do we want? Do we want higher crime or lower crime? Do we want more drug abuse or less drug abuse? Marijuana is still classified as a substance 1 controlled substance. And it's not going to make our community any better. Well, what I'd like to see is Alamosa be drug-free. I moved here because it was drug-free. And am I for the sale of marijuana? No, because it's not going to be controlled. It's going to be sold across the countertop by non-professionals. And to me, that's a recipe for disaster.
Thank you, David. Let's move on to Ward 4, and we'll start with you, Councilor Stefano.
I'm here running for reelection because of the things that I believe in and what this country and what Alamosa stands for. I'm a businessman here in Alamosa. I was born here in Alamosa, went to school, boys' school. I can't believe that 4 years have gone by, and it's been an honor to serve Ward 4. I also have seen a lot of changes in Alamosa, all positive. The Boys and Girls Club, the rec center. Now we're dealing with the ice rink. I've been a proponent for that ice rink. I am a proponent for the children that are in our care in this community. I love to see kids, and I think they deserve a chance to grow up and make something out of their lives and not be running the streets, and that's why I really am involved in the ice rink project. I have served on boards here, seniors. I'm on the senior board. I see a lot of things going on in the city that can be changed, and I would like to be a part of the changes that are coming. I know we are a great city and a beautiful city. Alamosa is growing, like I say. So with that said, I would love to be reelected, to serve this community to the best of my ability. I've gone to many sessions in Denver, Many University. I got a certificate for classes that I've taken on how to better serve my constituents in this city. It's all about you, not about us. You are our voice. We represent you, and that's why we are always open to anyone that has any questions or about our ward. What can I do for you in our ward? When it comes down to the marijuana, I also am a big advocate against it, simply because I have smoked it, and I know what it does to people's brain. They say it doesn't alter your brain, but I believe that it does, and I believe that it's a gateway to other drugs. We're having a big heroin problem in Alamosa right now. I've seen firsthand what drugs do to people, and it's sad. Like I say, I'm a businessman here. I'm having a hard time finding help, people who are sober. And it's really sad that our young people are headed in that direction. And I would do anything in my power to stop that drug epidemic if I can. I don't have a problem with the medical marijuana if it really helps someone. But like I say, to have it downtown, there's been people that say, well, we have bars downtown. What really amazes me is that we need to stand up for what we believe in. We can't let people just overrun us with their ideas about this and that. I mean, half this country is going to be walking around half medicated if we allow this whole thing to happen. So I am totally against retail marijuana because I've seen what it does in the cities. And we ban cigarette smoking in the bars and public places, but it's going to be okay to be in a club and pollute your lungs. Secondhand smoke carries 4 times more tar than a cigarette, and it's proven. Look on Colorado Marijuana website, and it tells you about the secondhand smoke, and the children are going to be inhaling all this stuff, and that's my biggest concern is the children. They need a chance to have a life. So,
Thank you, Mr. Stefano. Mr. Carson.
Thank you. My name is Michael Carson. I'm running for the councilor seat for Ward 4. And I'm a lifetime resident of the Valley. I grew up here, grew up in South Valley. And the primary reason that I'm running at this point, I was torn with the idea of running or not, but I have questions. That's my primary drive. I have a lot of questions as to some of the changes that I've witnessed in our community, and they're not positive changes. I'm seeing Alamosa from a different point of view, and a lot of the changes are negative that have come to our community. And I'd like to be part of helping improve some of that. I've got questions as to the infrastructure and some of the progress that's been made, in certain parts of town and other parts that haven't been quite affected by that progress. And those are my primary drives in being here today. I see a lot of parts of town flourishing and becoming more, modern and more, with the future cleaner. They're cleaning up streets. And I see other parts of town struggling to keep up. There's parts of town that, in the 25 years that I've been in Alamosa, that I've never seen anything happen. And I've lived here right now steadily for right about 20 years, and there's parts of town that I haven't seen anything change. And then there's parts that I've seen completely remodeled that are entirely different from when we grew up here. And so that's my main drive, is I want to understand why. I'm not a politician by any means. I've never run for a public office. I've been on a ton of boards, community boards. I've helped with many organizations, and I've helped, community health centers build and create infrastructure. So I've worked with the underserved of our public and our communities, and I've seen how they're suffering here in the Valley. I was a small business owner here and still am. And, Mike was right. You can't find help. It's hard. The people in our Valley are struggling. And I think, a big part of that is drug related. And, moving on to the issue of the medical marijuana or retail marijuana, I just don't think our community has a place for it. If you want to buy weed on at a store, go 20 miles either direction. I see, many negative impacts that it's done, and I think by creating more of that culture, we're just bringing people here to help foster it. And, it poisons our community. It already has. And that we aren't really seeing a huge, as a state, we're not seeing a huge comeback with that money. The money's there, but we're not really seeing it come out the way it was supposed to. And it's brought huge influxes of people to our state. Our real numbers are 5,000 a month. Those are real documented numbers of people that are coming as residents and changing plates, changing licenses. And the reality is we're getting about 15,000 people a month. And so it's not going to go away. It's not going to get smaller. I think we need to start preparing for that influx of people, and keeping marijuana out of our town, I think, should be a big push for all of us. We don't need it. Our kids don't need it. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Let's go on to Councilor Vigil, who's running at large.
Thank you.
Council.
Thank you to the Chamber of Commerce, City of Alamosa, Holly Martinez, and the Valley Courier for putting this candidate forum on tonight. I'm going to open up with the same joke I opened up 4 years ago. My name is Jan Vigil. I'm not a Hispanic female. 4 years ago, I sat here, and nobody really knew who I was. I was able at the time to defeat the incumbent and former mayor by more than 200 votes. Across the board, I received more votes than anybody in the at-large race, or as well as the race for mayor at that time. This did not just happen on a whim. I had to work my tail off to score one of the biggest political upsets in Alamosa's history. This notion of hard work for you all is what I pride myself in, and I plan to do that over the next 4 years. My slogan then was new face, new leadership, and that carries into tonight and over the next 4 years. I graduated from Adams State in 2013 with a degree in political science, government, secondary education, and a minor in coaching. During this time in Adams, my professors told us to do something with your life. And I thought right before graduation, what better way to do something than to serve our local government? And I knew it was going to be an uphill battle, but I got there, and I feel that hard work paid off, and I'm going to continue to do that. I came here on this board to get things done for the city of Alamosa and you, its citizens. This is not about Republicans or Democrats. This is not about fear tactics and scaring people to vote a certain way or act a certain way. This is what you can do for the city of Alamosa and to move this city forward. And I feel like with that, I've been able to be a catalyst for a lot of positive change in town over the last 4 years. Some examples of that are the new glass crusher at the recycling center, 2 new dog parks in town, a state-of-the-art multi-purpose facility on the south side, a comprehensive plan for the city that we're going to follow over the next 4 years with the help of city staff. And as you all can see, especially on First Street, increased money for streets and infrastructure projects. I pride myself on listening to people and their ideas and concerns. I will never promise that I or we will act or decide in a certain way, but I can promise that I will listen to you and give you the attention you deserve. I am honored, truly honored, and very thankful that you all have given me another 4 years. I feel like the stepchild up here on the side. But I'm going to work my butt off for you over these next 4 years. As far as marijuana is concerned, last November, almost a year now, we were talking about putting it on the ballot for the general election last year, and I thought that would have been a great idea, as more people tend to vote in general elections, and we can get a truer sense of what this community truly wants. But it was decided by the council at the time that we wouldn't go that way. I kind of feel that that was a mistake. However, also at that time, Mr. Ferris Bervik said this, and I think this is very important. He said, you council folks don't have to put it to the people. We elected you to make this decision. And I thought we could have made that decision, but I think it's a great idea. It's going to you, the voters. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what the marijuana industry is. People, regular Joes, won't be selling marijuana in retail shops. There's a lot of laws and rules that people have to follow. But if this passes, we need to accept it. If it doesn't pass, we need to accept it and move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. All right, we'll move into some questions, and I will ask all of the candidates to try to stick to the 2-minute, excuse me, just a minute. To try to stick to the 2-minute answers. Yes, thank you. And I am going to try to combine a few questions that I feel are similar, just in the interest of time. We will take a break at some point, following which City Manager Brooks will talk to us about the issues that are on the ballot besides tonight's candidates. So these two questions are somewhat related, so I'm going to combine them, and this is addressed to Mayor Lucero, and therefore, Mr. Coleman, you'll have a chance to respond as well. Mayor, your campaign signs say moving Alamosa forward. How have you specifically moved Alamosa forward? And I think tied in with that is another question to you two, candidates for mayor. How do you personally support economic development in Alamosa? Mayor Lucero.
Thank you. Moving Alamosa forward, of course, is just something that we all believe in. We all want to move forward. We don't want to stay stagnant. We want things to happen that will benefit each and every one of us. During my term on council, I have done quite a bit of moving Alamosa forward. When I first initiated doing away with the smoking indoors, that was one of the things that I pride myself on. Eventually, the state went on smoking, and so there was no smoking in indoor enclosed places. The other thing that council, and let me put it this way, I don't do things on my own. I can't do things on my own, but I try to motivate people to do things that will make sense not only to our community, but to the people at large. How can we move Alamosa forward? It's been said up here. We've got a multi-use pavilion that we've all worked on. This isn't a one-man job. This is a council decision. Everything that we do up here is done because the group feels it's in the best interest of the community. And so in that, not only do we have infrastructure and street improvements, we've got improvements in recreational areas, bike lanes. We're always looking at ways to move Alamosa forward and make things better for the lives of the people that live here. I can't take all the credit. There's no way that I can do that. That would be unfair to the people that sit at this table. And so in that, I would like to be at least a catalyst, or at least a person that brings new ideas forward, and start the process in which new ideas and things like that can grow and benefit everyone in the community.
Thank you. Ty.
Thank you very much, sir. When I first came to Alamosa, I realized that I had two choices if I was going to be productive and successful in our community. The first choice was to wait for the community to embrace me, or the second choice, I could choose to embrace the community. I chose to embrace the community, and it has made all the difference in the world. I started moving Alamosa forward by working with a nonprofit housing organization that created housing opportunities for hardworking people, not only in Alamosa, but throughout the San Luis Valley. Not only did we create housing opportunities, but we also helped the local businesses, contractors such as plumbers, electricians, sheetrockers, framers, and roofers. We helped them during some of their coldest months because our organization was building homes to create a decent and safe and sanitary place for people to live. Today, a little girl, thanks to that effort in trying to move Alamosa forward, a little girl can get off the school bus, go home, and do her homework around the dining room table in a decent and safe place she calls home. That's one thing that I've able to do and help move Alamosa forward. I didn't stop there, though. I also, in the organization I work with, I started working with re-lending programs that were designed to help the businesses in our rural community gain access to capital and funding so that those businesses could grow and expand their businesses so that they can keep those jobs in our communities. I was able to help several businesses, not only in Alamosa, but also throughout the San Luis Valley, create those jobs and expand those businesses. And here's why that is important. Whenever businesses don't have access to capital, they're not able to grow in there, they're not able to expand, and then eventually what happens is they go out of business. And then that's what causes small towns to become ghost towns. Currently, I serve on the SLV DRG board, and I'm the chairman of that board, which has a re-lending program as well that basically helps businesses in the San Luis Valley and Alamosa, and it helps those businesses move forward by allowing them access to capital as well. So I have like 3 pages of how I've moved Alamosa forward, but 2 minutes is not enough to explain what I've done in 7 years, so I'll keep it short and I'll end with this. Many businesses in this community know that personally I have created and developed a Shop Locally campaign that I personally fund every year out of my pocket. I buy advertisement in the newspaper, I buy advertisement on the radio stations throughout the San Luis Valley, and it encourages people in our community to shop local. And that's what I've done personally to help encourage shopping locally, and I will continue to do things to help with economic development and encourage people to keep their money in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, again, I'm going to kind of combine a few questions here just in the interest of time. So this will be to all candidates for city positions. The person is asking for you to give us an example of something the city is doing well. And I think in combination with that, I think you should define what you feel the role is of a city councilor / mayor. And Jan, let's start with you.
Thank you. I believe the role for a city councilor / mayor is to think big picture. We're not to get involved in the day-to-day activities of city staff. That's not our role. I'm not qualified enough to get into numbers and the police and that type of stuff. That's not my job. I trust our city manager, and we give her direction with what we want to happen, and hopefully she does does that. So I think our job is to listen to people, bring those ideas back to the staff and to the council and work on those things. And that process over the last 4 years has been very surprising to me. I thought going into this thing that I was all fired up and I want this idea and I want this idea and I want this idea, and it takes time. You talk about it at a retreat. We talk about it up here in council. We get public input. We get the first reading. We get public hearings. We get the second reading. And over 3 months, finally, we get something done. So that's our job, I believe, is to think big picture. As far as what do we do well, I think our police does a darn good job with the limited resources that they have and this growing opioid problem that we have. I wish people are, like Ms. Daniel said, people are very fired up about this marijuana issue. I wish that same passion would carry over into the opioids and that we would get after this thing, because that's killing people. Opioids are killing people. So I think the police does a darn good job. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Carson, let's go to you.
I believe the role of a counselor is primarily to be a representative of the people in regards to the direct issues of the city. To listen to your community, listen to the people in your ward, for example, in my situation, and bring their ideas and concerns back to the council and do your best to try to convey that and to try to make that happen, bring those ideas to light, and be a good representative of the people that have put you in there. I believe that's the primary role of a counselor, and to be able to judge, what decisions are the right ones based on, your knowledge and experience, but ultimately to consider and try to bring light to the people's concerns and the people's agenda. That's what I primarily believe the role is. As far as things the city's doing well, I believe our community as a whole does a lot of things well. I do believe in this community and have chosen to stay here. Opportunities for money are always great elsewhere, and they always talk about cost of living is cheaper in the valley, and that's not necessarily true. But I believe our community does a lot of things well. We come together when things are not going well. You bring to example the water issue a few years ago. The community came together and really helped each other out. Jan was right about our police. They are dealing with a lot. I think they're extremely understaffed, especially with the influx of people. Like I say, one of the issues that I see primarily is a ton of people from elsewhere. We have a big homeless issue for a town of our size, and I think the police are doing the best they can, especially with ordinances that are in place. I've looked at the charter, and I don't believe that they have the correct ordinances in place to do some of the stuff that they can, and I think those are things we should address. But I think we do a lot well as a community. That's why I really want to be here and be part of moving us into the future.
Thank you. Mr. Stefano.
I also believe that the council is one unit. We work together to bring forward the things that need to be brought in Alamosa. I also believe that we are servants of the people. We don't serve ourselves. We are servants to you. Whatever you say, that's what we try to do to better our community. As far as things that I see going forward in Alamosa, we have new streets, First Street, a lot of paving has been going on. We have a very hard-working public work department. We have a wonderful police department. I wonder sometimes what we would do without the policemen that we have. They're all very honorable, integrity. It's a pleasure to work around them in our job here as councilmen. I've been privileged to see Alamosa grow as far as Rex Field. I painted Rex Field. I've done a lot of projects for the hospital. We're working on the oncology project right now. I see things going forward. I don't see anything getting stagnant here in Alamosa. It's a beautiful city. We have bike routes. We have all kinds of rec stuff, dog parks that we've been working on. Mr. Vigil, a proponent for the dog park, and we have all this stuff going on. I don't see anything negative about Alamosa that's really not happening. I think it's a happening place, and I believe that we're going to continue to grow to beautify our city more and more. We've been working on beautifying downtown. There's a lot of empty buildings that I would like to see rented, used, besides sitting empty. So there's a lot of stuff that we need to do, and we are not one-man army here. We all work together to make this happen, and that's what it's all about, is a unit. That's why we are the council, city council. So I believe in Alamosa, and I think a lot of stuff going on that's becoming beautiful, and we're going forward. And I would like to see a clean city like other cities that we have, beautiful, beautified downtown, make it a gateway to a lot of things. A lot of people go through here on 160, and they see Alamosa, the first thing they see, and that's what we try to beautify, is what they first see when they come to Alamosa. So we don't want to portray anything negative in Alamosa, because it is a beautiful city, and I'm glad to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, continuing with the same question, let's go to Mr. Coleman.
Are you going to go to the mayor next? Pardon me?
I'm reversing the order.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you very much. Just wanted to make sure. Okay. Before I became a city councilman, I went out into the community and I talked with many of you to find out what are some of the things that people look for in a city council person. And I wrote these things down, and I try to live by them on a daily basis. The first thing they said is, Ty, we want someone who has integrity. They said integrity is what you do and the way you act when no one's watching. They said, Ty, we want someone who's transparent, someone who's willing to make all information available to the public. And they also said, Ty, we want someone with very good listening skills. And when they said that, it reminded me of my mother used to tell me, Ty, the good Lord gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, so that you can listen twice as much as you talk. So it's important for political candidates and officials to listen more than they talk. And they said, Ty, we want someone who know how to take action on issues as well in the community. They wanted us to ask questions of the community and get feedback like we're doing here today. They want someone to communicate on a regular basis and not just around election time. And they wanted someone to take action on behalf of what's important to the citizens in Alamosa. And finally, they said, Ty, we wanted someone who can work together as a team. And the acronym for team, TEAM, stands for Together Everyone Achieves More. Now, when we look at what do we have good going on here in Alamosa, I would say that the community is very good about coming together for the common good of our entire community. A prime example of that is the multipurpose center that is being built this very moment. And we would not have had an opportunity to build that facility, which is going to benefit not only the youth in our community, but also people throughout the San Luis Valley. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Lucero.
Council had a vision, but with that multi-use pavilion. And I don't know how many times we were shot down by all sorts of different budgetary issues, all sorts of challenges that were brought forward. But council persevered. Council saw the importance of what this structure is going to mean to Alamosa. What's the city doing well? I think everyone on council represents you folks out in the community. This is not a one-man show. And we do that by listening and bringing back to council what your desires are. You know, we do whatever we can to strengthen our infrastructure and improve our streets, our water quality, and we are in the process of overseeing some of the largest expenditures when it comes to water treatment that we've seen in quite a few years. Obviously, our water treatment plant cost well over $16 million, but that had to be done. And so that was something that we did well. We also work with other towns and municipalities in the valley We realize that we are the hub of the San Luis Valley, but we need the help, we need the support of other cities and towns in the valley to make the valley strong, because if we make the valley strong, we'll make Alamosa strong as well. We do well in working with our nonprofits. There are many opportunities and challenges that our nonprofits face. We do the best we can in trying to deal with homelessness, drug abuse, and people in need. And so in that, I think we do a very good job in trying to make sure, or at least try to alleviate a lot of the pain and anguish that a lot of folks have out in the community that don't have the resources that many of us have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Broyles.
Thank you. You know, Alamosa does several things well. I do like their comprehensive plan. However, I worry about if they have the skill and commitment to carry it through. I know they spend quite a bit of money on it. I like the fact that in the budget, they're going to increase the police staff by 2 people, and they're going to hire a public relations person. I think that's needed in the city. I like the fact that the city works well with the county. And I like the way they work with Adams State University. I like the way they work with the hospital. And overall, I like the unity that I see in Alamosa. So with those things said, I mean, we have some pluses. And Alamosa, you know, Alamosa is a great place, but it has great potential. And what we need is a leadership and vision to carry that potential forward. So we have the seeds. Let's see if we can grow it into a tree. Thank you.
Thank you. Christina.
Thank you. And I just have a question, Keith. When you hold up a 2, does that mean our time is up?
That means 2 minutes, yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
I was just checking.
Randy, could I get a 1.5-minute warning? Thank you.
That might be helpful for us. So I do think that our role as city council and the mayor is ultimately we are a board. We are an advice-giving board to city staff, and that we have to come together and kind of talk about our vision and share that with the team and allow them to execute that. I think that the mayor's role in that is somewhat different, because that was part of the question, that their job is really to unify us, to talk to us when there are challenges, and to help us kind of come together as council and share that vision together. And so I do think that that is important. Mr. Broyles and I actually agree on several of the things that he said that he thinks the city is doing well. I think our comp plan is great. I do believe in our staff and our commitment to moving it forward, and I think we have the capacity and the ability to do that. Another thing that I think the city is doing well is our staff. We have a fantastic team, from our police officers to our IT staff to our city staff to our finance staff. These people work very hard to make sure our city runs so you don't see it running. And I know that can be challenging, right? We have things when the street gets torn up, you see it then. But all the times that street is open, you don't see them. That's because they make that happen. And I think their job is done very well, allowing us to be able to function as a city. I think Public Works is one of the most important pieces of city infrastructure that gets no credit or fanfare. So that's it? Okay. Oh, 30 seconds, okay. So the things that we are also good at is partnering. Our partnership with broadband on grants, our leadership in the healthcare sector partnerships, and the events that we support, both city-sponsored and not. We have police there to help manage and function. We have staff there who are on boards and commit to helping events go well. We are a fantastic partner regardless of the event that is happening, and I appreciate that about our team. Thank you.
Thank you. So moving on to again, I'm going to combine a couple of questions that I believe are related. Our crime rate is one of the highest in Colorado. What is your plan to bring our crime rate down? And as most of us believe, that is related to a drug problem that not only Alamosa is facing, but frankly, the entire state and country is facing. So how do we bring both of those to light and fix the drug and crime problems that we have. And Christina, I'm going to go right back to you.
Okay, thank you. So this is a tough one. Our crime rate is high because people have addiction issues, and people have poverty issues, and people have all kinds of other things that happen in their lives. One of the things that I am hoping Alamosa can do is build a resilient community. That starts with our youth, that starts with our families, and giving them resources and opportunities to build themselves up, so when choices like addictions or other things come to them, they have the ability to say no early on. And I think while it might sound flashy to say we need rehab, we can't have a rehab without people working there, having the people be able to pay for it and look at those things. Rehabs are important and necessary. It's not the city's role to run a rehab. It is absolutely the city's role to be a partner in how we manage that as an entire San Luis Valley community and how we bring that forward. But running a system like that is very difficult and requires a lot of expertise. Many of you have heard me say many times we are short on addiction professionals. We need more people willing to look at medication-assisted treatment. We need more people willing to work with people who are in the throes of their addiction and with their families, and help them become more resilient. Addictions happen because, honestly, sometimes people's lives feel pretty crappy, and getting high makes them feel better. So we have to give them opportunities to feel better in other ways. I think it is really necessary for us to focus on some of those core root issues before we just go throwing a Band-Aid and have solutions to provide. So that's my decision, or my answer, sorry.
Great, thank you. Mr. Broyles.
Yeah, the crime issue is complicated, as Christina says. It deals with drug, it deals with poverty, it deals with lack of jobs, it deals with lack of education, and it deals with values and morals and families. And how do we solve that problem? It's complicated. I think we break it into parts and start attacking it from the top and from the bottom. We need a strong police force, first of all, on the enforcement side. And I'm for a drug task force. We used to have one in Alamosa. I'd like to see it come back. We need education. Drug rehabilitation, when a person gets addicted, they cannot get off drugs themselves. They need help. We need to give them that help through rehabilitation and through education. Our youth desperately needs to be educated so that they understand the opportunities. We need to have a skilled workforce, and we need to create jobs. And Alamosa is lacking in creating jobs. In the last 5 years, our job growth has been 1.8%. That's 0.35% per year. Why can't we improve that to the national average of 2%? So it's a combination. And I think if we break them into parts, work on it one by one, we have the skills in the community. We have the resources to attack it. And together, working together, unified, and using our skills and our commitment, we can reduce the crime rate. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Lucero.
The crime rate and our drug problems are intertwined. There's really no two ways about it. I don't know how many of you go over to Walmart, and every time you go to Walmart, you're looking at the police officers having a major presence there, and you're wondering, why do they have a major presence at Walmart? It's because we have so many folks that are addicted to drugs, that are stealing goods to resell so they can support their drug habits. It's unfortunate. What can we do about it? It is a problem, and it's a problem that we need to tackle with all the resources that we have available, as well as with all the organizations that deal with this issue. Unfortunately, the resources are limited. However, many times just being able to educate your children, sitting down with them, and visiting with them about a lot of the issues that are out there makes all the difference in the world. That personal relationship that we have with one another, just being able to talk with one another many times can soothe the soul. We need to deal with the poverty issue through education. We need to do it and Dave's absolutely right. We've got to educate our kids at a young age and make them aware that these things are out there and they're not going away. But as elected officials, we do everything we can through our police force, through all the organizations that we look at and help us in trying to deal with this issue on a daily basis. It's not something that's going to go away anytime soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Ty?
Thank you. I would like for the community to know that we're fortunate to have a very good police chief who's very active in the community, talking with different groups and organizations and trying to find creative ways to keep our crime down in the city of Alamosa. So the first thing I would recommend for us to do is to continue to work with the chief and his staff, and to make sure that our chief has the tools and the resources that they need so that they can be effective in doing their jobs. The other thing I would recommend us do is partner with organizations that are equipped with the staff and resources that constantly deal with addiction issues in our community. I also strongly encourage us to hold people accountable for their actions. We have to make sure that people are held accountable for all of their actions, and they have to know that there are consequences to their actions as well. And then I would recommend us to continue to invest in our young people now. It's easier to invest in a child than it is to restore a broken man or woman. So it's very important for us to make sure that our communities have resources and access for our kids to take advantage of things that will prevent or deter them from going down that road of dealing with drugs. And I currently work with an organization here in Alamosa called the Communities That Care, and they're currently right now are seeking out ways to find ways to deter kids from going down the path of using drugs. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stefano, sorry.
Yes, I do believe we have a crime problem in Alamosa. I did prison ministry in Canyon City for 15 years, and I believe that the education should start at home. I think the parents need to be educated how to spot their kids when they're on the verge of using drugs, or what, not be a policeman type of parent, but I mean, be aware of what's going on with your children. Look at the signs that are going on. It's sad that the police department on down the road has to deal with all these kids. But the reason I'm saying it begins at home is because when I was doing the prison ministry in Canyon City, 80% of the men incarcerated in Canyon City are there because of broken homes, either no father in the home or no mother in the home. So I believe that education right now is the key to curb drugs, I think, because the problem is they get in drugs with their peers or whatever it is. I believe that educating the public on the awareness of I wish I had the resources myself to open a halfway house to take in people like youngsters that are on their way to prison, or, you know, we leave the police department to babysit these kids. I totally believe that it starts at home with education with the parents. And I know the police department is doing the best they can, but it's an overwhelming problem that we have as far as drugs. I think a lot of the crimes that are committed are behind drugs, stealing. I know neighbors that have been robbed of just different tools and stuff like that. So I believe that we need to really educate the kids and the parents to be aware of what's going on with their children. You know, look for the signs of maybe they're heading that way, or you know, we need some type of education to curb the crime, I think.
Thank you. Mr. Carson.
Thank you. That's a tricky question because it doesn't really seem to get any better. You know, I think the issue is we have crime centralized in some parts of town. There's parts of town that have stayed stagnant. You know, there's parts of town where the infrastructure in general is more beat up than others, and I think that in itself breeds a lot of that. I think the vagrancy is a big issue that we have to address, that, you know, that brings a ton of crime, and all that fosters the drug problem. The drug problem is something that the only way to really attack it is as a community. You have to talk to the police, you have to ask questions, you have to give them the resources they need and the help they need, because they are only a group of individuals in a community of thousands. And so if the community isn't part of it, then, you know, we're at a loss already. And so I think by cleaning up some of these parts of town that have, you know, been left behind a little bit, we may be able to push some of that outward and then clean those neighborhoods up, because I know that the drug problem is worse in some parts of town than it is in others. And by cleaning those areas up, we may be able to force it outward as a whole. I don't think there's a real clear answer as to how you're going to get rid of the problem. I think you deal with it as a community and try to help your situation individually, because nationwide it's getting worse. You know, these issues are rampant statewide, and a lot of that has been brought because of the amendments that we passed. The marijuana has brought a huge negative impact to Colorado. And I think we have to address it as a community. Keep asking questions, helping our law enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vigil.
Thank you. You all have asked us to do something about this issue, and I'm happy to announce that your council currently, along with the help of staff and especially Chief Oaks, has been writing a grant for a program called LEAD. What this program is going to do is going to give 5 to 7 cities in Colorado a good chunk of money to attack the opioid issue, the drug issue. I would invite all of you to do your own research on it, but the quick on that is it most importantly acknowledges that this problem is a healthcare issue. People are stealing, like people have set up here, to get their high over and over and over again. So what this program does is it gets those people help right away. It doesn't put them in jail and then they get out of jail and they go steal right away again. It gets them the help they need right away, and it holds them accountable. I know Mr. Coleman talked about accountability, that they still have to pay back whatever the fine might be or whatever they stole. They still have to pay that back, but they get help right away in a counseling situation or in a rehab situation. And that money could come here. This is huge for the Valley. This would help all the communities here. So let's hope we get that. That will be submitted the 1st of November. We should know by the 1st of December if we get that. A couple things is hire some more cops. We're doing that in our budget. We're hiring 2 more, as Mr. Boyle said. I know there has been a re-emergence of the neighborhood watch, and with that, I would ask you people that you see crime going on and you tell us on Facebook, but you need to call the cops. Call the cops and they will help you. And also, I think another big part of it is you guys. We all talk about the broken homes and those moms and dads. Well, let's give them a sense of worth and try to improve our job and our economics here and get them some self-worth so that they don't go down that path.
Thank you. Well, I think I'm going to move on to a little bit more positive question, perhaps. This from a member of our audience tonight. What would you propose to make the Rio Grande corridor more of a public asset? And I think I'll start with Mr. Coleman, switching the order up.
Oh, thank you. Okay, wow. Say that question one more time, if you don't mind.
Sure. What would you propose to do to make the Rio Grande corridor more of a public asset?
Wow, it's really interesting because I sat in on a committee not too long ago, a few weeks ago here, from community members who were talking about ways of creating a beautiful corridor. And these people had some huge, gigantic ideas and dreams. And one thing they recommended us to make the Riverwalk a flowing river to where people can do some outdoor recreational activities such as kayaking, riding on those paddle boards and different things like that. And then they had this huge idea of making this restaurant, placing a restaurant on the river and making it a river restaurant right there where the liquor store is, to where they can walk down to the balcony in the back and then walk down the river and have paths all around the river corridor, and making that entrance into Alamosa grand, like with big signs, a big A or a big arch or something like that in the community to make it beautiful when people came over. So I would entertain some of those big dreams, because big dreams can become reality if the people put their minds behind it. So I'm going to dream big and say, let's make it a river corridor with trails and pathways where people can have a nice restaurant to eat at and overlook the river and watch people go down and kayak. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lucero.
I keep forgetting to turn that speaker on. The river corridor has always been a dream that we've all had. You know, we've always had challenges specific to what can be done on that levee. You know, property acquisition is a major stumbling block for access to the levee and for the river itself. And we are working on that. We are doing whatever we can to make the river to refuge a reality. In that, the challenge is to acquire some of those properties so that we can have access to the river on the levee. That's a major stumbling block for us, which are probably going to take more than 1 term or 2 terms, or maybe even 15 terms, like Charlie Grego back there. Charlie, you back there? He's been on council for 30-some years and has had this dream as well as we have. We all dream about that. We all want access to the river so that people can enjoy it, can recreate, can walk their dogs, run, and enjoy what nature has to offer. It's a public asset. Unfortunately, it's not all of it's a public asset, but hopefully, eventually, it will be.
All right, thank you. Let's go to Mr. Broyles.
Yeah, I've been to San Antonio twice, and I love their river walk with the boats, and you can go out on the evening and have dinner on a boat. I mean, that's my vision of seeing what we can do on the Rio Grande. Why can't we do that? And I'd like to see the corridor go more south, you know, and like Ty said, incorporate some shops and maybe some inexpensive restaurants. And all it takes is a vision, and start working towards that goal, and we can achieve it.
Thank you. Christina?
I really like this question, although I think everybody has really good ideas. So thank you, and I apologize for some of the repetition. I do think we need some more trails and maybe some more sidewalks, so running trails. One of the things I think that people come to Alamosa for is for running, and because of where we are, and I think running along the river completely and being able to do that would be very helpful. I also think if we could have some more public activities, so something that would be a little less maybe grand than what some of my colleagues have said, is really doing things more like the Rio Frio on ice. Utilize our cold weather and celebrate it as much as we can, and run along that river and have some more potential activities down there for people to be a part of. Have the paddle boards and the things in the summertime for people to be able to come in so the public can use it. Those are short term. I think the vision of having large an entryway or shops down there and things like that, I think that is wonderful. I think what we can start doing right now is getting on the river with people, with families, with kids, with us, and saying this is how we're going to do it, and this is where this gets built from, because then more people than a few that are invited to that meeting will have the vision and be able to share that with us as well. And so that's how I consider it to become more of a public asset, is we all get out there and use it together.
Thank you. Mr. Carson?
That's an interesting question, and it's not a question that I've put a tremendous amount of thought into. I'll be honest with everyone here. I've read some pieces on it of what they've tried to do over the years, but for me, it's hard to emphasize. It's hard to emphasize spending money on projects like that when I believe personally that we have other parts of the city that are suffering. I believe that having a nice grand entrance to Alamosa would be wonderful for an aesthetic purpose, and possibly promoting use of the river and seeing what kind of feedback we get there. That would be great. Possibly work programs to help some of the youth in the summer clean Willows, clean that area up, make it a little more accessible, and start pushing a vision forward like that. Right now, it's when you cross the bridge, it's extremely thick. All that area is thick. So for me to actually picture something right there is difficult, especially when I've got other visions in mind for our city. I believe that cleaning up other parts of town besides just Main Street are very important. I do believe we have a beautiful downtown. We already do. The 6th Street side could use some work, and we do need to make that more accessible to public, more accessible to businesses that would want to actually be there and create some parking and some usable space there. But for me to say that I want to dump millions of dollars into projects for aesthetic purposes, I really can't give you a clear vision on that at this moment, and I apologize for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stefano.
I believe that without a vision, people perish. I believe that the river corridor that we have right now, the levees, I've taken a ride from the bridge all the way to the back of Adams State on that levee, on that trail, on bikes with my granddaughters. And I believe that Mr. Carson said, why pour all that money? I think that we should work on what we have right now. The vision will expand, I'm sure, once we start kind of small and grow big. That's the way it is. Unfortunately, everything takes a lot of money. But I believe that the trail that we have right now is beautiful. It's a beautiful ride. I think if we cleaned it up, like he said, get kids, trim the bushes, level the ground, just make it a really positive experience to ride your bike. I believe that on that ride, you see the river as you ride along. The river is beautiful, and I think on down the road, we need a lot more infrastructure done right now. State Street needs to be paved. There's a lot of stuff in my ward that needs to be done. There's a lot of streets that need a lot of tender, loving care, and speed bumps all over. But I believe that we should work on what we have right now, like the trails. If we beautified the trail, I think on down the road, people would see, this really a nice ride or something like that, and then we go from there and expand a little more to the river walk. I went down to Salida, and they have this thing from downtown that goes in, like a driveway goes into the river area. There's restaurants, a lot of stuff. We need to develop a lot of areas, but it takes a lot of money to do this. So we need some developers to come in and give us a hand. But I believe that right now we have a beautiful area, beautiful levee. And I believe that, like I say, a lot of our streets need more tender care than spending $1 million to do the river right now.
All right, thank you. Mr. Vihil.
It's kind of hard to follow all that up, but I'll try my best. Before we have any, I love the vision that you all have and the great vision that you have for this, but there's some things that we have to get done first, like we have to certify our levees over again, and that's going to cost a lot of money, and that's going to happen over the next few years, so let's get that done first. And people right now, through different groups headed by Mick Daniel and Julie Mordecai, are trying to ask people who own property on the south side of the river, back in there between Bell, Lincoln, and Adams State, who own property on that, if somehow we can make some deals and get that for the city and you all the people. So let's get those two things done first. And there's already things going on the river. We have Sundays on the Rio in the summertime, paddle boarding. We have the dog park number 2, like I like to say, is going to open up pretty soon within the next 2 or 3 weeks. That's just north of the trail system on the north side of the river. But I appreciate the vision you all have. I don't think of the San Antonio River Walk. I think of the Pueblo River Walk. That's awesome. I don't know if we can build a convention center at the end of the Riverwalk. That's kind of really out there. But we can do some tangible things, like maybe someone can open up a little restaurant, the Archway. That's all good stuff. I've heard people say, why don't we make it like a white water course and that? Well, I believe someone told me that the river from State Street Bridge to the entry goes down maybe like 3 inches. So that's a lot of earth to move, and we don't have money for that. But maybe we can do some fishing opportunities and stuff like that. So thanks.
Thank you. Well, with that question, I think we'll go ahead and take, excuse me, about a 10-minute break, and then we will hear from Heather Brooks about the issues that are on the ballot, and candidates will be back with you with more questions following Heather's comments. So enjoy about a 10-minute break here. Thank you. All right, thank you very much. It is my pleasure to introduce our city manager, Heather Brooks. And there was a late question submitted that I think is probably most appropriate that she address as city manager. So, Heather?
Thank you, Keith. The question is, why did it take so long to detect and stop the illegal actions of the city finance director? Essentially, that case is right now still working its way through the court system, and so everything I say is allegedly because nobody's been found guilty or innocent. They're presumed innocent until proven guilty. Essentially, the alleged theft occurred in very small amounts and through techniques that were very challenging to identify. When we received an audit report that indicated not necessarily theft, but potential things not being as clean and in order as it needed to be, we paid for extra services for Wall Smith and Bateman to actually come back through with a fine-tooth comb. And you know, their direction was follow every lead, look at everything, try to identify if there is something going on. And they were not able to find anything. And then a break in the situation came when another party provided information that was able to point us in the right direction. And as people in the auditing firm will tell you, once you find the end of a string and you pull it, you can unravel a few other things. And so it was very unfortunate. It's something that the city council and city staff took extremely seriously, because not only is it theft, allegedly, but it's also public trust and it's public funds. And so it was something that we wanted to be transparent and handle head on. But it was something that some of the techniques that were used were very good and sophisticated to where audits and even additional services were not able to find them. So moving on then to why I really came up here, I feel a little duped with that. The city council has placed several items on the ballot for November, and what I wanted to review just very quickly, probably 5 minutes or less, is those items and the reasoning that council had on bringing these before the voters. The first one is a marijuana taxation question. They really debated on if they wanted to do a taxation question for medical and or recreational. In the end, they decided not to do medical, and they did vote to place a recreational sales tax of 5% on the ballot. I think some of the points that council felt was very important for this decision is the city does anticipate some cost for regulatory, for administration, enforcement, those types of things. However, they didn't want to do a large percentage increase because they want to make sure that there was an amount of funds that would be brought in to cover what those increased costs are. The average rate, looking at other communities, is about 5%, so I think they felt that was very much in line with those amounts. And the anticipated annual amount is about $300,000. So this isn't something the city is looking to try to get rich off of, but we're looking for funds to try to offset some of the regulatory and enforcement issues. The other thing from an educational perspective that council felt was important is you can vote any way you want on the marijuana questions themselves and vote completely different on the sales tax question. So if someone wanted to vote no or yes on the marijuana question, you can vote the opposite way on the tax question. So they are very separate questions, and you can vote any way you feel is needed. The next one is a council compensation question. The data that council looked at when it came to this was the last increase was in 1997. And unfortunately, council cannot increase their compensation. It has to go before voters. And so that's why it's being placed on this election. When we looked at the consumer price index, it has increased about 50% over 20 years. And the question that's going before voters is to increase council compensation, so this is an annual amount, from $4,800 to $7,200, and the mayor from $7,200 to $9,600. The question also has a part that instead of having to bring it back to the voters, because that's not the most comfortable situation, is that there could be a regular increase beginning in 2022, that every 4 years, based on the consumer price index, that would just have a small regular increase. The other item that is before the voters in November is what we're calling Senate Bill 152, but most commonly known as broadband. There are 68 municipalities and 28 counties in Colorado that have already opted out of Senate Bill 152. And what that means is Senate Bill 152, when enacted, prevented municipalities from partnering with the private sector for broadband. So that means we cannot apply for grants to try to get more broadband. We can't utilize our right-of-way, our existing infrastructure to help the deployment of broadband. Now, there are some communities that have gone to the extreme and they've started their own utility for broadband. That is not the interest of the City of Alamosa or City Council. Our interest is that we feel broadband is critical for economic development and that we need to have the fastest deployment as possible. So we want the city to be able to partner in that. We cannot do that unless Senate Bill 152 is repealed. So that is what that item is. Another item, we have a busy election coming up. City Council many times is looking at their advisory boards, and some seats go unfilled because there's just not very much interest. So one of the questions that Council wanted to put before voters is to allow county residents that have an interest in the city to be able to fill those positions. These are just advisory boards. It doesn't change who votes for the elections. It would not impact the Planning Commission because sometimes they're more than advisory. They do have some authority beyond that. So this would only be for advisory boards. And the person from the county would need to either work full-time, own a business, or own property in the city. And then they would be eligible to serve on an advisory board if appointed by City Council. And then the last item that will be placed before voters is repealing the charter provision that requires contracts for public improvements to have that contractor have a bond if it's above $5,000. So obviously when this was put into place, I believe $5,000 was probably a much bigger item than it is nowadays, because almost any of our capital projects, to even be a capital project, has to be $5,000. And so we see that the competition for some projects by highly qualified firms is very limited, because to get to the level where you are getting a bond, that starts to limit the competition. Now, clearly, council would still require insurance, and for those large construction projects, probably still require a bond. But for those that are maybe a couple $100,000, $500,000, and you get qualified, capable local firms, this would just allow for more competition. When our Public Works Director took a look at some of our more recent projects and how much this potentially could have saved the city and saved the tax dollars, it could be estimated about hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And this is just simply by allowing more competition. And so that is the removal of those bond requirements for public improvements. Thank you, Keith.
I guess I should ask quick, are there any specific questions about any of those ballot issues that somebody would like to address to Heather? All right, well, thank you for your help. Well, moving back into our candidates this evening, I've got a couple of questions related to the recent report by the ACLU concerning our municipal court and judge. Trying to put these together, I apologize. What do you plan to do if elected or re-elected to monitor the municipal judge to assure that people's civil rights are not being violated based on their economic status? And I guess the second question pretty much relates to the same thing. So we'll go with that, and let's start with Mayor Lucero.
Obviously, this is a subject that has been reported on in the newspaper, and it's unfortunate that Alamosa was selected and our judge was the center of the controversy. However, in retrospect, one of the things that council really wanted to do was to get tough on crime here in Alamosa. Unfortunately, there are situations where people's rights may have been violated, and on the other hand, they may not have been violated, depending on this person that was being visited by the ACLU. We did look at what the ACLU had implicated our judge with, and we had work sessions specific to some of the allegations and some of the facts that were probably not all in order. Some of the allegations were true, some of them were not. And so in that, council basically decided that it may be a good idea to form a committee or a task force of sorts that would oversee the judge in his relationship with what he does with defendants and sentencing and just the myriad around that entire issue. And so that, I believe, is something that council will be doing in the next few months. I believe our judge has said he will not or will not seek a reinstatement of his contract by January, December, January, something like that. So we are also in the process, or will be in the process of looking for a new judge. However, taking all that into consideration, I believe that council acted properly in dealing with our judge. I think we wanted him to get tough on crime, and he did get tough on crime. And so I think that's an issue that will probably be maintained by council. We'll just have to see how the discussion ensues.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ty?
Thank you, Keith. I really appreciate it. Council takes matters like this extremely serious. I want people to know that we've only had that report less than, I guess, a couple weeks, and it was very thick, and we had probably less than a week for staff to go through it and point out some things in that report to bring attention to what has been going on. And I believe to this point, we are going to have to work together as a team, as council, to come up and find a way to make sure that what we put in place will benefit the residents here, as well as make sure that we're able to monitor what the judge does in the future. We also have to remember that there's a due process to where you have to hear all sides of a situation. My mom used to tell me, Ty, there are three sides to a story. There's your side, there's their side, and somewhere in the middle, there's the truth. So I think that as council, we have to do our due diligence to make sure that we follow the right process and gather as much information as we can as possible, so that when we start working on a resolution to deal with monitoring future judges or this judge or what have you, we're doing it with the best interest of all the residents in Alamosa.
Thank you. Jan, let's go to you.
Thank you.
So, as the mayor said, he resigned from Monte Vista, and he will not be seeking he will not be trying to do this again in December, January. So I see this as a great opportunity for us as the next council, and we talked about this a little bit at our last work session, and it's a philosophical discussion that we need to have. What do we want in our next judge, coming from a council perspective? Do we want someone who's super hard on crime, or do we want someone who's kind of rehabilitative and that type of stuff? So we have the opportunity to do something really good and to correct this issue. As the mayor said, we are going to create a committee that oversees the judge. This is a best practice that's happening across the country, up and down the court system, so I think that'll be good for us. And in this time, I think it's important to respond rather than react. A lot of what we read in that report 2 weeks ago was sensational, and it got people talking, and there is some truth to it. And I did not appreciate, and I'm sorry, but I didn't know the judge was doing this to some folks, especially these poor people. If we would have known this, we would have taken care of it. Yet there were some things in that report that aren't true, and that you can look at that report from the city staff that made that last week. There was a comment made that we as a council told the judge to be tough on crime. I don't really recall that. We've only met with the judge twice in the last 4 years, so I think we could have done a better job directing him.
Thank you. Mr. Stefano.
Thank you. I am really torn apart with this situation. I've known Daniel Powell for many, many, many years, and I always thought he was a fair judge. I see a lot of negatives and I see a lot of pros in this situation where I would not want to be in his shoes to judge people. It's a hard job, I would imagine. From my point of view, from what I seen, I wasn't in his courtroom all the time, but I always thought he was fair. And I know that he gives a lot of the defendants a lot of opportunities to pay. A lot of them, unfortunately, choose to spend their money on drugs or something else instead of paying their fines. So it's a hard call what he does, and from what like I say, from what I've seen, I don't think the incarceration rate was really that huge to cause an alarm as to what he does. I mean, what would I do in his shoes if I told somebody, okay, you come before me time and time again, you don't want to pay your fine, what is he supposed to do? So I don't know all the legalities of it, but sometimes a lot of people get an unfair shake for the position that they stand for. I've been trashed on Facebook a few times because of my stance on marijuana. But I will not rescind the way I feel. I will stand up for what I believe in, that is right, and truth. That's what this country's all about. It was founded on truth, integrity, honor, and that's what I believe. And so I really don't know what to say anymore about this situation. I just hope that it works out for the best for everyone.
All right, thank you. Mr. Carson.
I think the best thing that we could do moving forward is to pay attention. You simply have to pay attention. The court is someplace that we should send an advocate, whether it's a committee, an individual, to see how the judge is conducting himself in the courtroom. I personally saw the conduct in the courtroom, and I saw people that were first-timers in that courtroom and people that had been in there several times. And I think you can be hard and be tough and hand out justice the right way and not belittle people. I think you can do both things. You can be extremely tough on crime and do it in a nice way. You don't have to be jerky about it. You don't have to, necessarily impose your personal will besides that of the law. I did see him on a personal note, I did see him treat people differently at different levels in the courtroom, and I don't necessarily think it had to do with the crime. But I think had we paid attention to that in the past, somebody would have come, brought it to light, and maybe that report wouldn't have been filed, because, they are right, it did put us in a pretty negative light. But I believe that's the easiest way to deal with these issues. Council's already done a good job of deciding to form a committee to monitor this judge and to monitor, the future judges, and I believe that's the right approach. You got to pay attention. You got to have somebody in there listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Daniel?
Thank you. I think first and foremost, I've always valued the ACLU and the perspective that they bring to things. I do believe you have to weigh everything, kind of as Ty said it, and find the truth for yourself in there. The thing that I think we need to do, again, besides observing the judge more closely in this position, is really how we as a city vision for the way we hold people accountable. Some of the direct quotes that were said, some of the things like Mr. Carson said about the demeaning language, those to me are unacceptable. That's a personnel matter as well as a philosophy for the judge. So both of those need to be addressed, I believe. I also think we need to encourage our judge and our municipality to use diversion programs, to use treatment programs, and to recognize that it is way more important to meet defendants where they are and talk about where they are and what they need versus imposing the same level of sanction regardless of what's going on in their lives. It is really important that we give the judge the leeway to be a judge, right, and the leeway to manage his courtroom or her courtroom as they see fit, as well as ensure that our citizens are being treated fairly and that crimes are being held accountable. People who are committing crimes are being held accountable. Accountability comes in lots of ways, whether that's restorative justice, whether that is paying a fine, community service, or looking at what else they can do to give back to the community and repair the harm that they created. Diversion programs, restorative justice programs, things like that help people be accountable. And remember that we all have our own lenses. And when we come into a situation, we look at it a certain way. Poverty in and of itself is not a crime, and we shouldn't treat people like it is. And so we need to make sure that we as a city council are taking into account our philosophy as a city and holding the judge accountable to that. Thank you.
Thank you. David?
No, I think the solution is pretty simple. I don't know the situation. I'm an outsider. But I'd like to hear Judge Powell's side. But it's pretty simple. All you have to do is set objectives and then audit those objectives every year. And I don't understand why City Council hadn't done that before. It's pretty simple. You don't need a committee to study. I'm tired of committees. I think the city has too many committees. And when you have a committee, I look at it, it's analysis by paralysis. And nothing gets done. And so really, it's a simple solution. Set the objectives and audit those objectives. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, this question is directed towards our mayoral candidates, so we'll just go to you two, and let me see my order here. I apologize. Mr. Coleman, you'll be first. What do we do about the deer problem here in Alamosa?
Wow. That question has been around since the beginning of time. What do we do about the deer problem? Well, this is what I can tell you what we've done about the deer problem. This has been a problem ever since I came on council. And we started off by having a study done, and I'm not for sure where that study is right now in regards to the deer, but we were first trying to make sure that we really truly had a deer problem. We were trying to make sure that the population was continuing to grow, and I believe staff is still monitoring that process to see if we are having it, because to be honest with you, I think just like Councilor Daniels mentioned how marijuana has kind of divided the community, to be honest with you, the deer issue has divided the community as well. I ask people all the time about the deer, and you have some people who love them, and then you have those who hate them. we may have to get a petition circulated throughout the community to see what people want to do about it and put it back on the public to vote on it. But right now, we're monitoring the deer problem, and eventually we'll see what can we do that's humane, and also we'll see if there's any resources we could utilize to help us with that situation.
Mr. Lucero.
I love deer. I just wish they wouldn't be here. You know, wildlife belongs to the department, well, they belong to the citizens of the city of the state of Colorado. That's who owns the deer. We don't own the deer. We have little or no recourse when it comes to thinning out the herd, for the most part. At one time, we did have a deer hunt. I don't know how many animals were taken, maybe a dozen, maybe less. Problem is that they love Alamosa. They love the flowers, they love the grass, they love the, I guess, and a lot of them are very, creative and very courteous, because a lot of them walk on the sidewalks and wait for, it's amazing. But like I said, they belong to the state, the Department of Wildlife, and they're the ones that should be overseeing this issue. There are recommendations. I visited with a gentleman the other day who is an outfitter, and he said that he did a lot of work back east specific to this, in culling the herds, as well as donating the meat to people that needed it. And so in that still lies a dilemma for us, because who's going to pay for this? And it's not an inexpensive venture. So at this point in time, it's one of those things where drive slow, don't hit the deer. Other than that, there's not much we can do. We can listen to all sorts of different opinions, and I'm open to that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, going back to all of our candidates tonight, the question is related to our city streets. Obviously, a number of streets in a state of decay, according to this question. Is this your top priority as a candidate? And if not, what is? And let's start with you, Jan.
Thank you. Yes, city streets and improving our infrastructure is a very important thing for me and for this council, and I think we've proven that over the last 4 years by upping our monies to roads and infrastructure by hundreds of thousands of dollars. So when people ask us, when are you going to do my street, it's important that people know that we have this system where we put in the street, and if it gets enough traffic, if it's a major problem, if it's a major thoroughfare in our city, that type of stuff, there's a pecking order. And I would invite you, and I think it's our job as council members to let you know where your street is at over the next 4, 5, 6, 7 years, and when we're going to get that done. Now, I do agree, though, that there are some streets, and every year at this time, budget season, we have the opportunity to move that street up or move that street down, but just some prime examples of what we've done lately. If you look at First Street, that's awesome. I wish it would have been done in 4 years and not 7, but that's a topic for another day. The 8th Street by the elementary school is done. That looks really great. And every year we're getting, I forgot the term, but we fill in the cracks and we go over the streets every year. And that's happened across the city. So we are doing this.
Thank you. Mr. Carson, same question.
Yes, that's primarily one of my concerns. I just heard Jan talk about the council's system, and I've heard this before. I've heard about the system and an algorithm or some kind of formula they use to determine which street rates repaving or which street rates work. Now, I've gone through that list of the capital improvement fund. I personally have sat through, we've gone through it, and the thing that concerns me, again, is I go back to my questions. Why is there so much money slated for particular neighborhoods and so much improvement that's going to take all this number of years and $0 for certain neighborhoods? I can specify Ward 4 has no money slated in the next 7 years, period, not one improvement at all. And those are questions that I have. Those are the issues, I moved into our neighborhood, we're going on 12 years in the same spot. When I moved in, they cut our lines in for the city water. And the story was we were going to get that taken care of expeditedly. 12 years later, that hole has sunk probably another 2 inches. And it's like that down the entire middle of the street. Now, if you want to go to using the system or the formula, whatever the formula is, because again, I want to see this. You talk about traffic, State Street has to be, again, I don't know the formula because I haven't specifically looked at it, but State Street is an extremely highly trafficked street. And I don't see anything slated for that street either in the next 7 years. And so these are the questions I have. And to answer the question that was posed, yes, it's a major priority. It is the primary function, the infrastructure. That is my primary goal. We don't have streetlights either. That's another thing I'd like to address in our neighborhoods. And I think those are concerns that we do need to address extremely, quickly, because these streets, these talks should have been had 5 years ago, 8 years ago. We can't be talking of arches and stuff like that with the streets in disarray. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stefano.
On the other hand, we are a pretty big city. There's a lot of money that needs to be spent on a lot of different projects, so you kind of shuffle around what's the most important part. For example, the water treatment plant has a lot of needs. It's cost us a lot of money to keep that project running. If you consider how much money the city puts out a year, it would probably fog you a little bit. The trash, the streets, the mechanics, the trucks, they all have to be maintained. We have to buy new equipment when new equipment breaks down. There's a lot of money that a lot of people don't realize that it takes to run this city. Sure, I live in Ward 4, and I would love to see State Street paved, but I understand the CIP also, and everything is done in conjunction with the monetary funds that we have. It takes a lot of money, like I say. First Street is costing us a lot of money. It takes a lot of money to hire ACI or whoever the paving companies are to do this project. So if you consider overall, the city is doing, Public Works is doing, I believe, the best job that they can do to manage these streets. Okay, we'll do this street, the CIP next year on the agenda. True, it is State Street. A lot of people see that when they first come in on the airport. I would love to see it paved, but I also know that it takes money. So I'm just throwing that out there. Just imagine how much money it takes to run this city, and I would want my ward to be, ideal, perfect place, but it ain't gonna happen until the money is put up. I mean, we just can't run the city on more taxes. People hate raising more taxes. So I just have to deal with it and take it a step at a time. We'll do this street, we'll do this street. And I think everybody waits their turn. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Joseph.
One of my visions has always been to improve the streets in and around our educational facilities. And therein lies a challenge for me, because we do have a matrix, we do have categories, we have capital improvement projects that outweigh others. First Street, of course, is a major thoroughfare east-west, other than 6th Street. Main Street was a major thoroughfare to get from east to west. And of course, you've got to travel all the way south to get on 6th Street to get back into town. One way, it becomes more difficult. The only other access we have is First Street. First Street, it was in deep disarray. In order for that to be improved, you've got a lot to think about. You've got major infrastructure issues. You've got property owners that you need to deal with in a timely manner. And so this project on First Street is going to require a little more time. That's my major concern, is public safety, public works, and of course all our recreational opportunities. But when it comes to streets, you know, you can travel down Interstate 25 for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 miles and never hit a bump. And in Alamosa, it's a little different story when you travel down our streets. We have different temperatures, different challenges when it comes to the traffic that utilize our streets. And so in there lies a challenge for us. But that is my number one priority, is our streets and our public safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Ty?
Thank you, sir. Our capital improvement plan is pretty clear, and it has a list of the streets in order in which we plan to move towards repairing and replacing. Our public works department has identified areas of concern and streets that need improved or repaired. If money wasn't an issue, I can assure you with the council that we have right now, everyone's street would be paved, because we have some truly motivated and dedicated council members on our council right now, to where I can assure you that streets are an importance to them. And they would like to have the streets in their wards repaired, as well as streets across the whole area of Alamosa. But unfortunately, money is an issue for our city, and we have to try to stick to a plan so that we can try to repair as many streets as possible. Just maybe a few weeks ago, because the issue came up and the question came up about, should we reduce the time period that it takes to repair First Street at the risk of postponing other streets throughout the city of Alamosa and doing those repairs later? The consensus of the majority of council said no. We want to make sure that we repair as many streets as possible with the funds that we have, instead of focusing on one particular area. And I truly believe this, with the council that we have right now, they are truly motivated and dedicated to making sure that the streets in your wards and in your communities are repaired as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. David?
No, you know, I think for any city, that's a constant issue, is streets and repairs. But I am impressed with the city. They have a 5-year capital plan, and there's the projects on there. Again, I'm like Mr. Carson. I can ask why is one project over another project, but I don't have privy to that matrix. But the other thing is, you know, we have counselors in each ward, and I would expect them to look out for their ward, the streets and gutters in their ward, and make sure the funds are appropriately allocated for their streets and in their particular wards. Thank you.
Christina?
Thank you. Streets are a major issue for us, as we all know, because we all drive on them all the time. I think the challenge that we have as council, as a community, is recognizing the competing priorities as well that we have. Some of us sometimes don't understand why we can get a potentially new dog park and my street can't get paved. The way the city funds are divided, not even just the limited amount of them, but the way they're divided requires us to do things differently too, and we can't just say, let's move all of this money over to this pot and do that. They're dedicated pots of money. So I do think that's a misunderstanding sometimes that people have. And when we look at the competing priorities, the algorithm or not the algorithm, however you do that, we have conversations that do bring those ward perspectives into account and talk it through as council. It is difficult, though, when we know that having certain orders of projects make that entire project cheaper or make it more efficient or more effective for different parts of our community to not be impacted all in one giant swoop. And so I think there's a lot more that goes into that. I think the questions are fantastic, and those are the things that spark the conversation. And we need to talk about if they're, what's happening in our wards and bringing that to the forefront. And I know we as council have moved priority streets. And we have said, nope, we don't want that one to happen now. We think we need to do this one. This one needs to be focused over here so this community is not left out. Those are conversations we have. I know sometimes people don't feel that way. But I can assure you that our counselors take your voice and your heart and your tires into consideration when we're having these conversations. And so the more input you give us, the more voice you'll have. So thank you.
Yes.
I wanted to add just briefly about the lighting in our neighborhood. I know that we are switching to LED lights as we speak. We're working on that with XL Energy, and they're going to switch, and there's going to be a lot more street lights in the future.
It's good to know.
And can I add one thing too?
Sure.
Because it does sound a little bit like south side versus north side, this ward versus that ward. But the railroad crossing on the Dew is going to get done within the next 3 weeks. So you might feel like you're in the middle of a mountain road, but soon it's going to be redone with the help of the city of Alamosa, the railroad, and the state of Colorado.
Thank you. And probably a decent segue here into this next question, and Ms. Daniel, we'll start with you. Do you consider the south side to be a viable part of Alamosa's business district?
So I think the south side has major businesses and employers, and they work very closely with the downtown area. As we have defined it, it is not in downtown, although there are viable businesses there. And so I think the important piece of ensuring that people get to the businesses that are there are having good, the visual signs, I can't think of what the name is, I'm sorry, good direction, good sidewalks all the way through, and making the path easier to get there. It is difficult because it's over railroad tracks. But I do think it's important that we make it as easy to get to those businesses as we do to other businesses. I think they're very viable. I think there's great businesses down there, and that we look to them to have a voice in the other things that we do. Our downtown is defined, though, and those businesses are not in our downtown part of our comprehensive plan, and I do think that that's an important distinction that we need to make, and that we worked on with our planners and things like that, and there are various reasons for that. And so I think we need to do what we can to encourage traffic and good sidewalks and walking and those things, and improve the 6th Street corridor to get there, as well as, ensuring that those businesses get as much advertising and as much support as we can muster when we all go shopping for the things that we buy. Thank you.
David.
No, the south side's very important. It adds a lot to our community. I love the residents there. I have several friends down there. And I like the fact that there are parks, the softball fields are there, our airport's there, we have the armories there. There's just a lot of pluses for the south side. And I think the south side should feel that they're important, because they are. And the city needs to take care of them just as any part of the city.
Thank you. Mr. Coleman.
Thank you, sir. To me, all sides of Alamosa are important and valuable to our community. Yes, the south side is valuable to our community. However, the comprehensive plan that we recently had completed does not consider the south side as a part of a clearly defined downtown. That's not a bad thing. It just defines what we consider downtown is, so as we move forward with growth in the downtown area, we could look for certain types of funding and other ways to grow that particular area. That's not to say that Southside is not important at all. For more information about the comprehensive plan, I think people should be able to go online and you could find out a little bit more about the comprehensive plan and how it relates to the Southside. But all sides of Alamosa, I believe, is vital to our community.
Mr. Lucero.
We've struggled with this north-south, north-side, south-side issue for a long, long time. Councilor Grego says there is no north side, south side. We are Alamosa, regardless of where we're at on the map. We have integral businesses on the south side of the tracks. We have tractor and implement sales. We have all sorts of cafes. We have bars and sports bars. We've got, as a matter of fact, our new school is on 10th, between 10th and 8th Street. We just redid 8th Street to the consternation of many of the residents on that street. But that street got put in. It's because of the vision that council and staff had in making sure that the traffic needs were being accommodated to and from that school. There are a lot of important businesses on the south side. Ruthie Brown, for one. She comes to council all the time and tells us how important the south side is, and she wants a bench, and she wants this, and she's not only arguing for herself, she's arguing for every business down there that needs to be recognized and needs to be made whole, in a sense. And so it's very important for us to make sure that we're equitable in our treatment of all those businesses. Thank you.
Mr. Stefano.
Thank you. My beloved South Side. You know, we get a bad rap in all the cities, if you notice. On the other side of the tracks is the ghetto, the slums. And that's how a lot of people portray South Alamosa, which is really sad. We have businesses there. Ms. Ruthie Brown has, Mr. Atencio has the market. There's a lot of businesses. Even though that they are not a part of downtown district, I believe that they should be acknowledged, that we should put some focus into letting these people know that their business really matters here in the city. On 285, like Joseph Mayor was saying, we have the Tractor Supply, we have the Bank Shot, we have SLV Pizza, just moved in that area, the ballparks and all that. I believe the South Side is a beautiful part of town, and I don't believe that we should divide the north side, the east side, and this side. And it's all one community. We're all united as a community. So we got to focus our insights on being more neighborly, being more, letting these people know that their businesses matter. And so I believe the South Side is a beautiful part of town, and we're not going to call it a ghetto anymore.
All right, thank you, Mr. Carson.
Can you repeat your question, please?
Sorry, do you consider the South Side to be a viable part of Alamosa's business district?
Yes, I do. I do consider this, as everybody stated, there's several businesses down there, all the way downstate, all the way to the airport. I pose questions. I've heard everybody talk about how important it is, what we want to do to make that better, how we want to improve it. Again, I go back to the numbers, and the numbers show me that it isn't important. There hasn't been anything slated. Again, we can talk all day about the need for improvement on some of these streets. You can go to the city's website and look at the capital improvement plan and take a look for yourself and see if you believe in some of these changes that have been made. If the businesses on the south side are viable, then why not improve that infrastructure? Why not improve the streets to get there? Why not make it easier to get to Ruthie's or easier to get to the airport? you know, you can look at these, and the reality is that it isn't important. There's seriously not a dollar funded for some of these places. And I understand that money's short. It's hard to come by. I mean, we all know that. We live in a poor community. And it is. It's, you know, I'm a business owner here, and it is hard to make a dollar in a place where there isn't money. And the reality is that I do feel that some of this has been neglected, and could we make these businesses more viable? Yes, we could. You could make it more attractive to drive downstate. You could make it more attractive, you know, to go to some of these other places with signage and better streets, curb and gutter, things like that, simple things. But yes, they are viable, and I think we do need to put more focus on them.
Thank you. Mr. Beal.
Thank you, Mr. Carson. I think you're saying a lot of good things, and I agree. I mean, let's be really honest, and what Charlie Grego says, there is no north side, there is no south side. Well, then why do we keep on not funding? It's in the 5-year plan. Why do we keep not funding streets down there or different things like that? I think there are some simple fixes that we can do. I think go spend your money down there. Go to Atencio's and spend your money. Go to Ruthie's and spend your money. It's not about just going one day out of the year to spend your money down there and think that everything you're supporting local business. But down there, we have the rec center, we have the multi-purpose facility. There are some simple changes that we can do down there aesthetically to help. We can put in park benches. We can put in trash cans. There's some down Main Street. And one thing that hasn't been set up here at all, and we hear it every day in the community and on Facebook, and we get phone calls and emails, is La Puente. We need to have a discussion with La Puente, with the people who run that place. And I've been pushing for it, and council's been pushing for it. We need to sit down and have a meeting with them and talk with them about what's going on down there, because there are questions with that place. And I don't think it's acceptable that there are still dirt roads down on the south side. Hopefully we can work that out. As we said, we improved 8th Street next to the elementary school. Kudos to our staff. We're going to reach out to the people on 7th Street and have some meetings about how we can fix 7th Street. And we're asking folks on 7th Street for their input. So are we doing things down there? Yes, but we can do more. And get over this north side, south side, yet we're all Alamosa. Like, what are we really going to be here?
All right, thank you. And I had vowed to get us out of here as close to 9 o'clock as possible, so I'm going to hold us to just one more question. And, excuse me, Jan, we'll start with you just to go back down the table. So in a politically divisive landscape across this country, how would you work to increase respect, collaboration, and improve the togetherness of Alamosa?
I think our number one job is to listen to people. Take those ideas, bring it back here, and let's talk about them. Like I said in my opening statements, I won't promise anything, but I promise to listen to you and go from there. And I think it is important to understand that when we're up here that we are a team, and it's not about what you want. And let's work together to improve this place.
Thank you, Mr. Carson. Sure. In the politically divisive landscape across this country right now, how would you work to increase respect, collaboration, and improve the togetherness of Alamosa?
That's a tough one. The reality is you got to have dialogue. You got to have your community talking to each other. You know, you have to get to know each other. You have to get to know the struggles of your neighbor, the successes of your neighbor. You have to back each other up. You know, we have a lot of negativity in regards to government in general now, you know, and so I think we need to set a good example. You know, emphasize backing up our city staff, our city, you know, our policemen, our city workers. I think there's a huge gap right now in the way people are treating our city workers, our city staff, cops in general. They're getting treated poorly. I think by improving that, you know, bringing a dialogue to people so we can understand each other better, I think that's a big step. That's one of the things that we had to do going back to La Puente. When we had that meeting, you know, I tried to emphasize that it wasn't anything negative that I was trying to bring, or not trying to help people in any way, but I think the people that we are trying to help have to become part of this community and learn how to understand each other. And, dialogue, we have to talk, we have to get to know each other.
Mr. Stefano.
I always believe that you get what you put out to people. If you pull out anger upon someone, you're going to get anger back. If you put out a smile, you'll get a smile back. When I was a kid in my neighborhood, people used to stick together. If a neighbor needed sugar or an egg, they would go knock on somebody's door. Can you lend me an egg? Can you lend me some sugar? I think we've lost a lot of that, a lot due to the media. I think the video, a lot of technology. Today, people don't talk anymore on the phone. They text. You don't get to know anybody anymore. You don't talk one-to-one. And I think, like Mr. Carson said, be friendly. Our neighbors, go visit your neighbor. Go, hey, how you doing today, or something like that. It's like going to the nursing home and cheering those people up at the nursing home. It works the same way. I think because of the world we live in, we're so rushed every day. We don't have time for this. We don't have time for that. But a lot of it is sometimes excuses. We can make time. We can make 5 minutes out of our day to put a smile on somebody's face. That's what I believe in. And I think more interaction with our neighborhood, with our neighbors, I think that would be the key to more friendly. What goes on outside in the United States is going on, a lot of division right now, which is really petty for no reason. A lot of petty stuff going on. So let's bring it together. And this is what we were all about. United we stand. And that's what I believe in.
Thank you. Mr. Lucero.
Local government is probably the most trusted and respected entity when it comes to governments. And in that, we have a duty, we have a responsibility to be good listeners. We have a responsibility to be approachable and be dependable. We have to answer your questions in a timely manner, because we really represent your needs and desires when it comes to what goes on in your neighborhood and in your community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Coleman.
Thank you, sir. Respect is very important. I remember my mom used to say, in order for you to be respected, you first must show respect towards others. I think that's very important in the political climate that we're in today. We must show respect towards others, and we must also make sure that we find ways to collaborate by building bridges instead of burning relationship bridges. Unfortunately, when we have a political difference, there are families, there are people who are not talking to one another because of their political differences. Instead of trying to communicate the differences and find ways to work together, they're burning their bridges. So by building bridges and finding ways to talk with people who are different than you, I think that helps with bringing a community together. And I also believe that as a political figure, you must lead by an example. My mission in life is to reach one and teach one daily by my actions, not by what I say, but by what I do. You should look at me and you should look at council and watch what they do, and that should be a reflection of who they are. In order for us to make our communities better, we must not only talk the talk, we must walk the walk. So I believe in the team concept. Together, everyone achieves more, and we can do that by learning from one another and respecting our differences. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Broyles.
No, without being redundant with what others have said, it really begins with love of God, love of family, love of neighbor, love of our country, and love of our city. Love is the key ingredient. What I really like about our community is its diversity of culture, because I think it teaches us tolerance, it teaches respect, and it teaches us appreciation for each other. And with that, with that, it comes the law, the rule of law and order. We need to, again, teach our people to respect law and have order. Otherwise, you have chaos. And we've seen what happens in other communities when that happens. And so it all, it begins with our leadership, each one of us individually, and the love that we have for each other in our country. And that's it.
Thank you. Ms. Daniel.
Thank you. I agree that it starts with a dialogue and it starts with listening, but I think it goes a little beyond that. It's actually listening to understand and not to debate. Listening with that open heart and that open mind about what the other person is actually trying to get us to learn in order for us to learn from them. We all come through this and through our worlds with our own lenses, and one of the hardest things is try to hear someone else's perspective when it's different than yours. I think it's about acceptance, and it's about listening, and it's about recognizing that I'm not going to agree with everything that is said by you or, by my husband or by my neighbor, but that I respect them enough to hear their perspective and to put that in my mind, and that I treat them the way they want to be treated, not the way that I want to be treated, because that might not work for them, but I treat them the way they want to be treated. And remembering that at the core of everything, we're humans together, and it's not about our political views. It's about how we live in this world and do these things together, because we're it. We're the ones who are going to leave this world for a future generation. We're the ones who have to get through where we're at now. And if we're not able to talk to each other and accept that everyone has a different view and perspective than us, we're not going to get very far. And so I want to learn from you and from people who are different than me and people who have a very varied views, so that way we can have that balanced perspective, and that we can share what my thoughts are and you can hear those and I can hear your thoughts, so we can come up with a different plan and a different way to move forward. And I think that's how we truly respect and move forward in collaboration.
All right, thank you. And to all of you, thank you for being here. I'm sorry if I didn't get to your specific question, but I think we covered a wide gamut of topics tonight. And we've got 2, 4, 6, 7 people up here that have been on the hot seat for over 2 hours, and I think they deserve a round of applause. Again, thank you for caring about the political process and what's going to happen in the future with our community, and have a good evening.